I'm very excited. We have a lot of people signed up today for our webcast, Empowering Financial Professionals Through Choice Management. As we were planning for today's webcast, I was thinking about all of the quotes around time. And there was one that struck me. It said, either run the day or the day will run you. And then there was another one that said, the bad news is that time flies. The good news is that you are the pilot. So I am so pleased to have Nicole Kalil with us here today. I met Nicole about a year ago when I first joined the college. She was introduced to me by Todd Schoon, who some of you know at the college. And what they have in common is they are both Northwestern Mutual alum. So I was so pleased that Todd put us together. Nicole is founder, business owner, podcast host, and chief women whisperer. And she is our expert today to talk about empowering financial professionals through choice management. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Hillary. I really appreciate it. And I'm a big fan of the quotes that you shared. And also thank you to the amazing team at the American College for inviting me to invest time with all of you. Today, I'm going to share one life-changing principle and 4 of my favorite tips for time management, because let's be real, time is the commodity we just never seem to have enough of. And once it's been spent, you can never get it back. So I know we all desire to do the best, most productive, most impactful things we can with our time, but the to-do list is oh so long. We're being pulled in so many different directions. We have big and sometimes conflicting priorities. We're attempting to multitask our faces off. It feels like we need to work harder and prove ourselves more to get the same respect, opportunities, and recognition as our male counterparts. We're also taking on the lion's share of responsibilities at home and with family. And don't even get me started on the increased amount of time we put into our physical appearance or into dating, or I don't know, growing humans inside of our bodies. I am just exhausted verbalizing the many things that are on our plates. So I come to you not as an expert standing at the mountaintop, but as a fellow climber. I am a work in progress in this area. And so I'm not sharing tips on time management from a place of like having it all figured out. Not everything is perfectly prioritized in my life or my business. My schedule doesn't always get followed. And I don't even know the last time it was that I had extra time with nothing to do. I don't even know what one does with free time anymore, because if I had free time, I'm confident I'd come up with some way to fill it. I am a recovering perfectionist, a recovering doer, which means I'm learning a lot of this the hard way and out of necessity after hitting many walls, burning out, feeling massive amounts of guilt for letting some important aspect of my life go by the wayside. And it usually is in the area of my own health or well-being, and sometimes even at the expense of relationships. So from that truthful, but maybe not so inspiring place, I'd love to share some of the biggest game changers for me as it relates to time, in hopes that one or more will resonate and impact you. Because here's what I know for sure. We are not alone in our struggle to manage time. According to Forbes, 2/3 of all workers experience burnout symptoms in 2020. And while COVID may have given us a few hours of drive time back, the global workday actually increased by 30 minutes a day in the last year. So it's not just you, it's not just me. You might be thinking, well, yeah, but so-and-so has so much capacity and gets so much more done than I do, or this person I follow on social media really does have it all figured out. And because she does, there's clearly something wrong with me because I can't seem to do it all. Let's start there, because I know deep down you know that's not true. So what is the biggest differentiator between those super women and us mere mortals? I'm curious what you all think, and I'm going to put up a poll just to get us started. It's an easy one. Here it is. True or false? People who have more capacity and get more done are better at time management. True or false? All right, lots of answers coming in. I'm going to give us second or two. I'd like to get to about 80%. All right. In 3, 2, 1. All right. Here's what we came up with. 63% of you answered true, 37% answered false. And for the people who answered true, I get it. And there is truth to the statement, except for one word. I take issue with one word of the statement, and that one word makes this statement false in my mind. So, based on my perspective, the false has it, but here's why. Because it's not time that we're managing. Time management is a misnomer, and it's the time piece that we really need to hone in on. It isn't time that we're managing, because time is both fixed and neutral. We all have the same amount of it. We all have 60 minutes in an hour. We all have 24 hours in a day. We all have 7 days in a week. I have yet to meet a human who's managed to create more minutes in an hour or more hours in a day. Like, can you imagine what you do with a 25th hour? That'd be amazing, but it is not doable. It is not feasible. It is not possible, because it is not time that we're managing. So if it's not time, then what is it? I would submit to you that what we're actually managing, what gives some people the appearance or the reality of more capacity or ability to get more done, is because they're managing choice. It's choice management. Time is fixed and neutral. We all have the same amount of it. So what we have the opportunity to do is manage the choices that we make with the time that we have. And that is the game changer. This principle, when I heard it many years ago, changed everything for me. It put me back in the decider seat. It helped me be responsible, like forward thinking, but also able to respond as it related to my time, versus feeling like time and things were just happening to me. It helped me be proactive versus reactive. This concept of choice management, if you choose it, if you embrace it, can make a huge difference in your day-to-day life and the results and outcomes of it. So choice management is about being mindful of what's the best choice for me to make, given my goals, given my energy, given my priorities, and a handful of other things. So being mindful of those will help you to determine what is the best choice for you. When do you have the most amount of energy in a day? When do you shine, or when are you falling flat? What are your key 3 to 5 goals? And are the choices that you make, both personally and professionally, and do the choices that you make is where you invest and spend your time in alignment? Somebody told me once, people will tell you what they value, or they'll tell you what their goals are, but the way to know for sure is to check where they're spending their time. Your investment of time is probably the clearest indicator of what you really value or what you're really working toward. So I'm going to put this quote up real quick. This is really my concept of choice management, and it's our biggest opportunity. So this is the one life-changing principle, at least it was for me. I hope it is for you, that changed everything for me. Now you might be thinking, gosh, but I don't have enough hours to make choices. I feel like I'm reactive. This one stat alone might have you thinking differently. The average person in America spends 144 minutes a day on social media. That's 17 hours a week. What choices are you making unconsciously, like getting sucked into social media, or being reactive, or taking on more than you should, versus being proactive and conscious of the choices that you're making? So I'm curious then, if you buy into this, at least for our time together today, if this is true, then what are the biggest barriers for effective choice management? I'm going to ask you that question by sharing another poll. What is the biggest barrier for you of effective time. Now, choice management. So what's the biggest barrier of effective choice management? Is it the to-do list is long and there aren't enough hours in the day? Is it I'm having a hard time saying no and take on more than I should? I don't have somebody I trust or anyone at all to delegate to. I'm often interrupted. I feel a ton of pressure to do it all. All of the above, or most of the above, or potentially if there is an other that I didn't capture and you want to throw it in chat, I would love to hear it. So for you, what is the best answer of what is currently getting in your way as it relates to, in this case, choice management? All right, we've got almost 70% of you in. I'm gonna launch in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. So all of the aboves have it, and this is by far the most common response. So some version of all of these things, I think, are affecting all of us, but most especially women. I think that, there are differences, there are nuances to being a woman in financial services, in the day-to-day lives, in responsibilities at home and with caregiving, in a variety of different ways. So I'm going to hone in on 4 choice management tips that I think are a little bit more particular, a little bit more nuanced towards women. And here they are. The first tip for success, one I know we all feel challenged by in some form or fashion, are boundaries, both creating them and communicating them. Now, I hear people often say to me, like, I don't want to lose a client, or I don't want to make somebody uncomfortable, or I don't want to piss somebody off. So I have a hard time saying no. That was a common answer, and of course included in the all in the above in the previous poll. Creating boundaries and communicating boundaries often does, research shows, the opposite of what we think it does. Boundaries show respect of self and of others. In fact, research shows that people respond more positively when people communicate their boundaries than they do when somebody just says yes. It almost is a demonstration of respect of self and the value of our time and the value of our work, but it's also a demonstration of respect of the people that you're working with. Now, no is a complete answer, but I don't know about you. I have a hard time just with a direct no in a lot of situations, like just being like, no, thanks, can't do that. It doesn't feel good for me. So one of the things I spend a lot of time working on myself and with the people I coach is how to communicate the boundary. So first step is coming up with what are your boundaries. Now, maybe it might be not working before a certain time, not working after a certain time, not working on weekends, not taking on every project that comes across your desk, not figuring out or finishing a project because somebody else didn't do their part, not feeling guilty and saying yes to everything as it relates to your spouse or your children or taking care of the house or family members or friends or what have you. Whatever version or whichever area you may have a hard time creating the boundary, the first step is to decide what it is and test it out. It doesn't need to be the boundary forever, but at least for now, test it out. So, but I've learned that figuring out the boundary is only like 20% of the battle. Communicating the boundary is the other 80%. So no is a complete answer, but communication can help create win-wins. So let's use this example of maybe I don't want to take client meetings after 4 o'clock anymore. And I am having a hard time communicating that because I think my clients or prospective clients are really busy working during the day and maybe have, family stuff and kids, and they would prefer evening meetings. Whatever the case may be, I don't just say, no, I don't do evening meetings. I might say something like, it is imperative to me that when I am in front of a client, that I am at my best. And I have learned that I really begin to lose energy around the 4 o'clock hour. And so in order to be the best for my clients, I don't see clients after 4 p.m. anymore. Now, if the normal workday is hard. I'm happy to do first thing in the morning or across the lunch hour. But after 4 p.m., I don't see clients. It's just not in theirs or my best interest. So that's an example, but how do you both communicate the boundary that's important to you, but also set it up so that it makes sense? And it doesn't need to be long-winded. You could even say something like, I don't do evening meetings because my family has my calendar in the evenings. So step number 1, decide the boundary. Step number 2, communicate the boundary, practice it. And step number 3 is test and evaluate and reassess the boundary. So I think sometimes we think, well, gosh, if I make the boundary today, what if it doesn't work for me 6 months from now, or a year from now, or 3 years from now? Or what if things change? And I think it's important to remember that our boundaries can be tested, and we can tweak them, and we can reevaluate them, and we can add more or change them at any point in time that we want. Remember, as choice managers, we are in the decider's seat of what we want to be doing with our time. So boundaries is a huge one. And I think, a little bit more specific to women. I think we have a harder time. We have a tendency to say yes and take on a little bit too much. I want to pause just for a second and check, Nikki, are there any questions that came through?
Yes, we have a question. In regards to boundaries, what about the times or situations when we don't have the choice?
Okay, so I think, and if I'm not addressing this correctly, chat back in. I think what we're probably talking about is that those times are those feelings where we feel like we are not in the decider's seat. Like my boss said, or my kid is sick, or something happens that feels completely out of our control. And I would submit to you that we still have choice. I think what happens is in those moments is the choice may not feel easy. It may not feel comfortable. It may not be obvious, or it may not be a choice you can make in the moment, but we still have a choice. And so recognizing that no matter what the circumstances, so I'll give you an example. If my kid's school called me and said she was sick and I needed to go pick her up, in that moment, I might not feel like I have a choice, but I do. I can choose to see if her dad could maybe pick her up, or another family member or friend. I could choose to communicate to the school, I'm not able to pick her up right at this moment, but I can come in 2 hours. Can you keep an eye on her? I could, choose to pick her up and drop everything, but it is still a choice. And it's the mindfulness of, even if it's reactive, you're still making a choice. Even if you're not conscious to it, you're still making a choice. And so, I would encourage you to play with this concept as if you always have a choice. Well, my boss is being a jerk. Well, you have the choice to go get a new boss, find a new job. And I don't mean to sound dismissive, or to communicate with him or her, or, explain why something isn't working or why some other way would be more productive. We have choice more often than I think we give credit to. Now, having said that, I want to be upfront that I am mindful of my privilege. And so I may have more choices available to me than some people do, and I might have less than others, and I might have easier choices or better choices. So I am mindful of that, and I know privilege can play a part. Having said that, I would really encourage you to at least play with, attempt to look at all situations as if you do have a choice, and then make the best one for you at the time. I hope that helps. All right, let's jump into a few other tips for success, again, especially as it relates to being a woman in financial services. The next opportunity to increase your choice management is what I call the 3 F words. Not F word like what you're thinking, right? But EFF. And those 3 F words are effort, effectiveness, and efficiency. Now, I've worked in financial services and consulted with financial services long enough to know, and by the way, this is not unique to just financial services. This bleeds into other industries for sure. I would even go as far as to say it's a bit of an American culture. But for sure, in financial services, effort seems to be valued above all others, above all other things. There isn't a problem we don't try to solve by saying do more, right? See more people, keep more meetings, get more referrals. It seems like an ever present response to just do more. So I think we've got the effort part pretty well figured out. Work hard, grind it out, grit, and all that good stuff is pretty prevalent in all of our cultures, most of our cultures. And so I want to be upfront that I'm not saying that effort doesn't matter. I would say all three of these play a part in you achieving your goals and achieving success. But what I'm saying is I think we over-rotate quite a bit on the effort part. We're so focused on input and activity. And because of that, we tend to not leverage and utilize the other two F words that play just as big of a part. So I have a couple examples here. First is with the Granum system. Now, I'm not sure if all of you have read the Art and Science of Client Building or are prescribing to the Granum system, but whether or not you are, I think the concept will make sense. In the Granum book and in a lot of companies, they say, you got to keep 60 meetings a month in order to be successful. And it just gets drilled into us. Keep 60 meetings, keep 60 meetings, keep 60 meetings. And in order to do that, you need to have 25 appointments on the calendar. You need to be 25 ahead, 60% will keep, and that's how you keep your 15 a week, and 15 a week times 4 is 60, and everything works if you figure out how to do 60. Now, if you hit 59, it isn't gonna work, right? Like, that's sort of the message that we're getting. And I'm, pushing this a little bit strongly, but you get the drift. But if it were only ever all about effort, then it would be as simple as that. 60 and everybody succeeds, 59 or less and everybody fails. But the reality is effectiveness and efficiency play just as important of a role. I have a woman that I coach currently, and her made to kept ratio's 84%. So when she has an appointment on the calendar, 84% of the time it keeps. And so the idea that she should be 25 appointments ahead is insane. If she did that, she would keep 21 meetings a month. And you might be thinking, well, more appointments kept is better. There's nothing to complain about there, except that more isn't always better. It's not always sustainable. And she might not be able to keep up with the workload or have the staff or infrastructure to be able to facilitate that. And that's true in her case. She would not be able to make it keeping 21 meetings a month, not long term, maybe in a short sprint. And so the pressure to be always focused on effort, be 25 ahead, be 25 ahead, is alienating for her, and it just doesn't work. And frankly, she's starting to feel like she's being punished for having better ratios. She feels like she's being punished for being more effective because mentors and leaders are constantly telling her to be more appointments ahead, to pick up the phone more, to get more on the calendar. And the reality is because of her effectiveness, and in her case, she gets really great teed up referrals, and also because of her efficiency, her sales cycle is actually better than the 10-3-1 of Granum. Not only does she not need to be 25 ahead or even 18 ahead at her current made to kept ratio, but because of her effectiveness and efficiency in the sales cycle, her actual number is to be 12 ahead. We've figured this out mathematically. So being mindful that effort doesn't solve all the problems, and sometimes it can create more than it solves. And effectiveness and efficiency have just as important of a part to play. Now, for those of you who might not be Granimals, I'm going to give a different analogy that I think will hopefully resonate well with you all being in financial services. If I asked you, and by the way, I use this analogy outside of financial services too, and it I think drives the point home. If I had person A and person B both saving toward retirement, who would retire best? Person A, who's saving $500 a month toward retirement, or person B, who's saving $1,000 a month towards retirement? Now, the simple and maybe kind of obvious answer is the person who's saving twice as much is going to have better retirement. But any financial advisor worth their salt knows there's way more to the story than that. It is not just about dollar amount in. It's not just about effort or input. Effectiveness and efficiency play just as much a part. So how effective is the vehicle that they're putting that money into? What's the rate of return? What if person A, who yes is saving less money, but is putting it in a Roth IRA, while person B is saving double the amount, but is just putting it in a regular old savings account for long term? The effectiveness and even the efficiency of that would make a dramatic difference in the answer of who would retire better. And then as it relates to efficiency, we've also got things like tax efficiency and making sure that our money is in the right place for the right reasons for the right time period. And then what if the person A saving $500 a month got an employer match of 100%? Talk about efficiency. Now, not only are they in a great vehicle with maybe a better rate of return and more tax efficiency, but they're being uber efficient in that they're contributing the exact same amount, but they're only responsible for half of it. So hopefully one of those two stories will just drive home the point that I'm ultimately trying to make here. And that is that doing more is not always the answer. Oftentimes, especially for women, it is not even the best answer. Asking yourself, how can I create efficiencies with my time? Where can I be effective with my time? And honestly, for a lot of us, the busier we are, the more we're doing, the less present we tend to be in our meetings, with our friends, with our families. And we end up actually creating inefficiencies by doing more. I often say to people, be where your feet are. You don't want to be in an appointment with a client thinking about tasks or a conversation with a family member or friend. You don't want to be interacting with your child and thinking about the to-do list you haven't finished yet. Focusing not just on effort, not just on traditional hard work, but also effectiveness and efficiency will actually improve your overall results and get you closer to the achievement, the results, and the success that you're searching for. So just to drive that point home, all three of these three F words contribute to your overall achievement and results. One does not trump the other. The only caveat is if you're brand new in the business, I would encourage you to focus on effort as a controllable. And then over time, you'll be able to assess both your effectiveness and your efficiency and put some game plans in place to improve and increase both. All right. The next tip for success is to delegate and leverage. We've heard this a ton. There is no way to talk about choice management, time management, any energy management, priority management. I don't care what you want to call it. There's literally no way to talk about it without talking about delegating and leveraging. Now, I want to distinguish between the two because sometimes I think we use them as they're interchangeable and they're not. Delegating is when you get something off your plate for good. Like you no longer manage that thing. It has become somebody else's responsibility. Leveraging is when you borrow somebody else's experience, expertise, or you might leverage technology or resources to help you, but you still are ultimately responsible. You still have a role to play in this work. And it can be where you leverage somebody temporarily or long-term. Either way you slice it, I just want to make sure that we are clear about the differences. One of the things I've noticed in working with so many women is we tend to not delegate or leverage things we enjoy doing, or things that we think we're uniquely good at, or things that we just love to do. And that can be really problematic. Just because you love doing it doesn't mean you should be doing it. So think about some of the things that you do in your role that maybe aren't the best use of your time, aren't the most effective or efficient uses of your time. Just because you love it doesn't mean you should hang on to it. That's something to be mindful of. Christy Charisse helped me, and I'm going to pass forward this tool on to you to determine what should be delegated, what should be leveraged, and what should you be holding on to, keeping in mind both effort, effectiveness, and efficiency. So if you have a piece of paper, I would encourage you to do this. It can be just a sticky note or whatever, but basically draw a plus sign on your piece of paper. And at the top of the plus sign, you're going to write things I love. And at the bottom of the plus sign, so on the horizontal axis, top says things I love, bottom says things I hate. And then on the left to right, on the left side, write high impact, or I'm sorry, on the left of your right, low impact, on the right, high impact. So basically, if I go in a circle, on top it'll say love, on the right it'll say high impact, on the bottom it'll say hate, and on the left it'll say low impact. And then think about all the things that you do. Anything in the upper left quadrant would be things that you love to do but are low impact. For me, as an example, I love running reports. I'm weird like that. But just because I love to do it doesn't mean it's high impact. Anything in the bottom left is things you hate that are low impact. Those are the easiest to delegate. Anything that falls in that quadrant should be delegated, like forever. It needs to become somebody else's job as soon as humanly possible. Anything in the lower right quadrant are things that you hate but are high impact. It might be something like asking for referrals, or working on your education, studying. And maybe you love that, that's great. But I know a lot of people don't particularly love the study time of getting the education, so that might fall there. And then in the upper right quadrant are the things that you love that are high impact. So basically what becomes obvious and easy is anything in the lower left corner should be delegated. Anything in the upper right corner is where you should be spending the vast majority of your time. That's where you want to put in the effort. That's where you want to become more effective. That's where you want to pay attention to efficiencies. Now, in the upper left, you can choose to delegate or leverage. And in the lower right, over time, it'll usually come later. Over time, you'll ultimately end up leveraging and or delegating those down the road. But that typically, is a bit of a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So one other tip here in the delegating and leveraging is just a reminder of what's the purpose. The purpose is to reduce the volume of things that are on your plate. It's not to do more in less time. It is to reduce the overall volume of things that are on your plate. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip, a principle that I've created for myself, and I'm testing this out, is I cannot add something without taking something off. I cannot say yes to something without first delegating another thing. I think we, especially as women, have the tendency to do far too often where we take something on our plate without having taken something off our plate. And let's be honest, you're not coming to that decision with a ton of time on your hands and where you're twiddling your thumbs and hoping for something to do. More often than not, when we're asked to take something on our plate, we are always at full capacity. And we might feel guilty, we might struggle with the boundaries, we might have a hard time saying no. But it is mostly problematic when we say yes, but don't say no to something else, or don't delegate or take something else off our plate. So I'm going to share a personal story in this example. my husband last night told me that he has a conflict. He's supposed to pick up our daughter from camp next Wednesday. And he just said, you know, I had this conflict come up. It's really important. Is there any way that you can pick her up on Wednesday instead? So I looked at my calendar and I actually can make that work. But rather than just saying, yes, I can do it, I said, I can make that work. Is there a day of the week that you can take one of my pickups or drop-offs? Like, this is an even exchange. And you might be thinking, well, you know, wouldn't it just be kinder to just take it and you know, do that thing for him? And yeah, we're kind to each other. He sometimes does really nice things for me, and I sometimes do really nice things for him. But in this particular case, in this particular week, it was gonna be harder for me to add that to my plate versus, you know, renegotiating versus letting him take something off. And so we did that. He's going to do a different drop off than I was supposed to, and that worked out fine. And that was kind of an even exchange. But I want to remind you there, being kind is not the same thing as being self-sacrificing. If I would have said, you know, yes, I'll take it, and created more stress for myself next week, that would have been self-sacrificing. I believe it was a kindness to say, yeah, you know what, I'm happy to adjust some things and trade a day. And it worked out well. So I wasn't willing to say yes to something without getting something off my plate. And that's more obvious, even exchange. You might be thinking about something bigger, like if a project gets put on your plate, or if somebody asks you to, you know, learn a new skill, or you, for example, want to up market and you want to spend a ton of time researching and learning the market. That's great, but it can't be additive. What are you going to take off? And here's what I know for sure. 9 times out of 10, when you take something off your plate because you've added something on, you end up taking off the bottom like 20% of crap you were doing. You end up taking off the stuff that you were doing just because, or just for the sake of, or just because you've always done. Adding something to your plate, but then forcing yourself to be mindful of what you're going to take off will only always make you up level. So just be careful that you don't say yes to everything and add things on. The ultimate goal in choice management is to reduce the volume. The most successful people do the least. And I don't mean that they work the least. I mean, they do the least. The focus is very narrow. They only spend their time on key activities that get them closer to key priorities and key goals. They don't mess around with all the ancillary stuff. And I think we as women would really benefit from narrowing our focuses a little bit more and reducing the volume. All right, I want to check in, see if there are any other questions. Nikki, did anything come through?
Yes, a couple participants are asking if you have an example, a visual example of the quadrant.
You know, I don't. I could dig in my drawer for one that I wrote down, but I don't. But you know what I'll do is I'll share it with the American College team. I'll scan one in and send it over. Actually, you know what? I might have. Look at that. Never mind. Here you go. Right on my desk. So this is the things that I love on top. These are the things I hate on the bottom. Here is low value, low impact, high out value, high impact. And then I wrote all the things I do as part of my business. And I, by the way, do this at least once a year. And I just did this with a team member, and I think it's here. She did hers as well. And so it was a really great opportunity for me to see where I was spending my time, what was draining me of energy, what was giving me energy, where were my opportunities to delegate to her, and also to decide which of the things were best delegated to her and which of the things we might need to leverage or delegate to somebody else, or maybe even somebody not yet on the team. So one thing here too, in today's day and age, we have a great ability to leverage outside of just people or, and I'm a big fan of leveraging people, but technology has made some of this stuff so much easier and so much more approachable. In fact, I would love, if you're willing, in chat, will you share your favorite time-saving app? I'm going to share two that I love, but if you'll share in chat your favorite time-saving app, I think hopefully we can all get a few good ideas. My two favorite technology resources are, first, Calendly. I'm not sure if it's compliant in all of your organizations or if you have some version of this that you can use, but it's ultimately a scheduling tool, right? I'm able to send a link to people and they can schedule time with me. I love this for two reasons. Number one, it is certainly efficient. It saves time on the back and forth. Can you do this day at this time? No, I can't. Okay, what about this? And then like 17 emails later, you've found a date 4 months from now, right? So it's certainly more efficient. But the other reason I love this app is it helps me to set and reinforce my boundaries without having to verbalize anything. Because they go into the link and they see when I'm available. And if I'm not available, they don't know why I'm not available. I don't have to explain it. It's just I'm not available. And so they end up fishing through to find the time that happens to coordinate with what works for them. And so, you know, I'm a big fan of that tool or some version of it for those two reasons. Another one is the Cozy, COZI, family organizer. It's basically a shared family calendar and you share tasks and give each other notes. It just eliminated the amount of text messaging I was doing back and forth with my husband, or like what time are you going to be home, or what do you have this day, or when are you going to be traveling, and all of that kind of noise that ended up getting created in our day-to-day lives. And if it's not a spouse or a partner or significant other, it's still, you know, if you have a parent that you need to coordinate calendars with, or gosh, when I was young and getting started, it took my mom a really long time to figure out not to call me during normal working hours unless it was urgent and important, and not like what she defined as urgent and important, but like life threatening. And I had to train her a little bit, but some sort of shared family calendar might have been helpful even in that circumstance. I hopefully a handful of things went through. If you don't have Calendly, you know, maybe put a bug in with your organization. I know some organizations I've worked with have found different tools that are compliant for them, or some workarounds, but at least conceptually, that's a great way to leverage technology to create effectiveness and efficiency in your time. And there are a bazillion apps out there that do the same. Nikki, again, let me just check in if there are any other questions before we get into the last tip.
Yes, someone is saying, with everyone being so busy and overwhelmed in the workplace, I often have a hard time delegating when I feel badly overburdening someone else's plate. Their ability to do it via their job role. Any tips or advice on this? And she says she's a recovering people pleaser.
Okay. Oh gosh, aren't we all, right? It's really hard to say no. So, or to feel like you're being a burden on somebody, or to ask and not be 100% sure what the response or answer is going to be. I get it. Here's what I would say. First and foremost, let's make sure we're not making stuff up. We have a tendency to assume other people are uber busy or overwhelmed, or they might not like doing the same things that we don't like doing, or they might look at it as us a certain way. We make up a lot of assumptions. And so I would say, first and foremost, ask the person. So here are some examples of what I might ask my team member, or somebody I might delegate to, is first, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being so overwhelmed you want to jump out of the window, and 1 being you're actually sitting around twiddling your thumbs all day, how busy are you? And so that gives me a sense of, 5, maybe that is true, and maybe it's not delegating to that person, it's about finding another resource or whatever. I might ask the question, of all of the things that you do on a daily basis, what would you delegate if you could? Again, same concept. If I can help get something off their plate, it might not be the most impactful or most effective use of their time before I add something that can be helpful. Or even just the way I might approach it is I might say something to the effect of, it would be life-changing, life-giving to me. It would make such a big difference if I was able to get this off my plate. Is this something that you would be able to take on, or do you have any other ideas of how we can get it off my plate? Make it more of a collaborative discussion, and maybe this person has an idea that works better than they might even, or maybe they might look at you. This happens with my team member a lot because I sometimes forget that she enjoys doing things that I don't enjoy. I'll be like, oh gosh, she's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? I love doing that. I'm excited about it. So I think having the conversation first and foremost, and don't just assume. And then the other thing to be mindful of is just the value of your time and how, when you don't delegate, you might be reducing it. And I know it's not conscious, but if I make, and you should be able to figure out your hourly rate based on your production and the time that you work and your client facing time and all of that. So let's say my client facing time is valued at $400 an hour. At some point, whether I, might feel like a burden, or whether or not I'm, and I can be helpful in helping people to also task manage and delegate and things like that. At some point in time, I just need to make a smart business decision. And if I'm paying somebody $50 an hour or $20 an hour, it is just a smart decision to give them something and pay them $25 an hour to do it than it is for you to take your $400 an hour value time and lower it and water it down. Because all that you're doing in that moment is choosing to take that hour that you could be making $400 and redirect it to do something that you would pay $25 to do. Even again, leveraging people short term. Is there another advisor who maybe might let you borrow a team member for a period of time? Or maybe somebody who's, on vacation or out on maternity leave or something like that. Like, look around and think about what your options are. But no matter what, I think it's really important that we just don't assume. That's probably my biggest tip there. I hope that helps. Any other questions, Nikki, before I jump in?
Just one last question on the quadrant.
Yeah.
Someone's asking, should we actually start tracking and listing all the things that we do in a day?
Yeah, so I think probably the best way to do this is, block out, if you can, a half an hour of time and just think about all the things you do, and don't overthink it. Just write things in where you think they go. So for example, I have some things that are kind of on the line. That means like it kind of could go either way, or this is really obvious to me. Like speaking engagements is right here. Like that's like my favorite thing to do. So that's going to be, so just write down what comes to your head and then keep the sheet with you for like a week, like on the side of your desk, or do it in a notes app on your phone. And as you catch yourself doing something, just ask, where does this fall for me? And after about a week, you'll have the bulk of what you do day in, day out. And then you can take a minute and kind of think through, did I put these things in the right place? And again, don't overthink it. It's not about getting things in the right place. It's about addressing the obvious first, which is delegating. Another tool or exercise that might be helpful is at the beginning of each day, again, whether it's on a notes app on your phone or a piece of paper, write, delegate, urgent, and important. And as things come up, again, don't overthink it. Just put it where you think it goes. I need to call this client back. They have a question. Okay, maybe that's urgent. Or my client called and they need a beneficiary change. That's delegate. Or, my client called with a referral. Okay, that's important, but may not be urgent, like in the next few minutes. And just as things happen, track it. I have a couple times a day where I put in my calendar, I call it flex time. That's my time to get caught up, to do the to-dos, to deal with things. I anticipate things to pop up. I anticipate little fires. And so having those little flex times can be really helpful, but that's where I do the stuff that ends up on my list. But here's an important trick that I learned. Start with the stuff on the delegate list first. Delegate first. There's something, that helps about knowing that people are in action towards getting things done. And the reality is, if you don't delegate first, you're going to spend a lot of your time on the urgent and important, and the delegate list is just never going to be gotten to, or it's just going to keep getting longer and longer and longer. So get things off your plate, delegate first, then hit the urgent, and then follow through with the important. Okay, let's hit this last tip. Here we go. Oh. All right, last tip for choice and time management. Ask for help. Oh my gosh, ladies, we kind of suck at this. And I think that at least part of it is because of perfectionism and or ego. And when I say ego, I very specifically mean feeling like we might look bad, or that people might perceive that we're not up to the challenge or up to the task. But perfectionism is probably one of the things that I see pretty universal among the women that I work with, and it certainly plays out in choice management. And it looks like this. We somehow bought into this idea that we're supposed to do it all, we're supposed to be it all, we're supposed to have it all, and oh, by the way, we're supposed to look good while we're doing it. And it's hugely problematic, primarily because it is not achievable. I know you know this logically, but perfect is not an option. Nobody's perfect, including you. But when you set yourself up to that standard, then even 90% has you feeling like you're falling short. And then we have the audacity to beat ourselves up for falling short on an unachievable goal. If you think about it logically, it's really crazy, but we do it over and over and over again. So be careful when you think, oh, I can't ask for help, or I shouldn't ask for help. Check in with yourself. Is this perfectionism or ego, or how I think it should look? Is that at play, or can you really not ask for help? More often than not, it's something other than not being able to. I would highly encourage you to teach people how to help you, whether this is your team members or colleagues or friends or spouse or partner or family member, whatever the case may be. For whatever reason, we often think that people will just know, like they know me, they know how to help me, and or they'll recognize it. And we kind of put people in the position where they're supposed to be mind readers, and it just doesn't work. Ask for help and teach people how to help you. I'll give you an example. The thing that used to drive me nuts back when I was in an office was what I called the drive-bys. It would be the person who'd come by, stick their head in the door and go, do you have a minute? As if there was any possibility that I was just sitting around waiting for somebody to come in, right? Like I wasn't trying to work my way out of mountains of work. And even if the conversation actually took a minute, which it never did, it was always 10 or 15 or 30 minutes. It wasn't just the time that I lost. It was the focus and energy that I had before the person walked in. So a 15-minute conversation, I found typically cost me like 30 minutes of actual time to where I could get back to the point I was before I was being interrupted. And so I made it a point of teaching the people I worked with that didn't work for me. So once I realized it, I had a conversation with all the people on my team. I had the conversation with my mom, who, as I said, constantly would text or call during the day, and I let her know that this was actually hurting me. And of course, she didn't want to hurt me. She just wasn't thinking. And anytime I had a new hire, I would have the conversation. I would say, listen, inevitably, you're going to have questions. Inevitably, you're going to need something from me. I want to tell you how to best leverage me, how to best come to me with your questions to set us both up for a win-win. I want to be upfront that I am the worst multitasker and I'm so bad when I get interrupted. So if you were to come by my office and open the door and ask if I have a minute, you're most likely going to get the death stare. And even if I give you a minute, you're not going to get the best of me. I'm not going to be the most engaged. And it's actually going to potentially be harmful for me in getting all the things that I need to get done. So if you need me, or if you have a question, here are your options. And I would give them 4 options, including ask somebody else or email me the question, but you need to email me a couple possible solutions because I wanted to train people to think about problem solving, not create a situation where I was the go-to to solve every single problem that came up. So the point here is teach people how to help you. Be clear about what is your love language as it relates to helping you personally, professionally, and in which ways can they best do that. I firmly believe that most of the people in our lives want to help us. They have the best of intentions, but if we're not communicating and teaching them how, we sometimes are contributing to our own problems. And then finally, I want to be clear, doing it all doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help your clients. It doesn't help your team. Again, the most successful people do less, meaning their focus is more narrowed and it's always aligned with their strengths and their goals. It's always, as much as humanly possible, upper right quadrant focused. And research shows, at least in financial services, that clients prefer to work with a team. So it's a win-win-win-win-win. All right, I'm gonna throw this up real quick. This is for the tough days, right? Like time management, choice management is easy when everything's going according to plan and when the days are good. It's the tough days. It's where the what hits the fan and everything falls apart. Those are the times where we really have to double down on choice management and manage our energy and things like this. So this recovery plan is a tool that I developed and used in coaching that can absolutely help you do that. So go to NicoleKalil.com/shop. You can get it for free. It's called Designing Your Recovery Plan. All right, Hillary, I am going to turn it over to you in a second. But before I do, I wanted to just thank you all for being here. I wanted to thank Hillary, both Lindsay's and Eric, for coordinating all the logistics and getting this all set up. And definitely thank Todd Schoen, who's been one of my greatest mentors for making this connection and making this possible. So Hillary, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you all. And my contact information is coming up as well if anybody wants to reach out. So Hillary, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I learned so much today. I love your approach, and I have delegate, urgent, and important, and that's going to be my focus because everything ends up in the urgent pile for me. So I'm going to work on that. Thank you so much, Nicole. I learned a ton, and based on the comments and the questions in the QA function in the chat box, I think you really hit a nerve, and I think you gave us a lot to think about and to apply. So thank you so very much from the American College Women's Center.
My pleasure. Let me leave you with this thought. While time is fixed and limited, your choices are not. So how will you practice choice management today? I'm going to leave this slide up. If I can be a resource or you want to reach out to me individually, please, please, please do. I love to hear from people. LinkedIn, Instagram, great ways to connect with me on social media. And of course, the podcast, This is Women's Work, or my website. Thank you again.